We've been steeped in intentional killings, trying to decide whether an intentional killing could be murder 2 with malice, or whether it could be elevated to murder 1 with the added mens rea of premeditation. Now I want to ask you a question. Can you imagine an intentional killing that should be treated as a criminal homicide, but less than murder 2? That's the subject matter of the next criminal homicide we discuss. It's voluntary manslaughter, which is an intentional killing that's committed under extenuating circumstances. Circumstances that the law believes warrants a reduced punishment. Generally, voluntary manslaughter arises under 2 major doctrines: circumstances that invoke heat of passion or extreme emotional disturbance, that's one, or in a completely different context, circumstances where a defendant exceeds the lawful privilege of the use of deadly force, sometimes described as imperfect self-defense. In this series of lectures, we're going to focus on the circumstances of heat of passion and extreme emotional disturbance. We're actually going to consider 3 jurisdictional views of this mitigation. First, we're going to look at heat of passion under the traditional view. Then we're going to look at heat of passion under a modern view and a completely separate view called extreme emotional disturbance, followed by the Model Penal Code. In a different lecture, at a different time, we're going to consider mitigating circumstances of imperfect self-defense as a theory for voluntary manslaughter. Heat of passion as a theory for voluntary manslaughter occurs where a defendant forms the intent to kill, but that intent to kill was formed only because of circumstances that cause the actor to lose normal self-control. Now, we're not talking about justifiable homicide like in self-defense. That's also an intentional killing. But that killing is considered proper in the eyes of the law, justified. Here we're speaking of a defendant who forms the intent to kill because his passion was inflamed. The killing can't be justified. It's a criminal homicide. But the law considers this killing to be less blameworthy than murder 2 because of the reason defendant formed his intent to kill. It's an interesting question to ponder. Should the law recognize this human weakness? That law-abiding people might be moved to kill under certain circumstances that aren't legal, yet the law should give them a dispensation for that crime? Remember, we're not talking about a get-out-of-jail-free card, mind you, but a reduced punishment for having committed the killing in this way. That's voluntary manslaughter. It's a concession to human frailty. Now, it isn't that we actually believe that reasonable people can be moved to kill because they're angry. We know that reasonable people aren't moved to kill. They exist as a model standard for behavior in an ordered society. Look, reasonable people never text while they drive. Reasonable people always write thank you notes. Reasonable people never kill because they get so angry. But this isn't about reasonable people. It's about regular people. So in criminal law, we ask about the ordinary or average person. Should we acknowledge that under certain facts, this average ordinary person might be moved to kill? As you hear me speak about this, where do you stand on the subject? Do you think that people should get a break for having become so enraged that they kill? And if you do, under what circumstances do you think that the law should allow it? It has been well recognized and settled in the law that one of these circumstances that might move a person to kill is the fact that the spouse is committing adultery. What if that person, so enraged by having witnessed an act of adultery by her spouse, kills either the spouse or the spouse's lover? Do you agree that the law should formalize a reduced crime like voluntary manslaughter and a reduced punishment that goes with that crime? Or do you think that the law should stand firm? Don't allow the mitigated murders. Don't allow voluntary manslaughter. After all, murder is murder, you might think.